it'll preserve the forest the way it was when I was very young. These trees, many of these trees were not here when people that are 60 years old were born. And so we're really going back to the future and back to the healthy state that was here before. This was an open savanna of oak and grass with a few pine trees in it. Now it's a nightmare of pine trees, and we have to do something about those.
Well, you call the pine trees something. What do you call pine trees here?
Well, you know, I love pine trees. I grew up in them all my life, but pines are weeds in the Black Hills. They invade the meadows. They grow so close together. We'll have 10,000 pine trees on an acre where there should be somewhere between 40 and 70. And so with those kinds of numbers, it's just not sustainable. And so when they become too thick and dense, beetles and wildfire come and sort of reset the ecological clock. And that's exactly what's happening here. These ridges are now, last year we didn't see any real signs of bark beetles in here. There were some mountain pine beetles and so on. This year, about every 100 yards, there's an Ips-loaded tree, and an Ips engraver beetle is a smaller version of a pine beetle. There's Ips all over the country out here now. This year, for the first time, Ips are rising in really strong numbers. And that happened in 2003, and in 2003, Ips killed more trees than mountain pine beetles. And so we have got to do something. And so what we're doing here is working to keep the green forest alive and to keep the houses up. So we're chipping the trees. And in chipping the trees, we're taking all of this volatile fuel out of the air and putting it on the ground where it's no longer a fire threat. And then we're spraying the trees that are left over so that if the chips attract any more beetles or whatever, they don't have anything to eat. We can't do nothing. If we don't chip the trees or cut them down and stack them up to burn them or whatever, the beetles are going to wipe them out, or wildfire is going to come in and kill them. The beetles are already here. There are billions of beetles already here. And so everybody has to take some measures to try to rescue this situation. And the best, the easiest way to do that is to take care of our own yards around our own houses. And so the state of South Dakota has this wonderful program. It's a 50-50 cost share program that allows the landowner to pay some of the cost. The state pays half the cost, up to $600 an acre. And then so homeowners can get this work done. And this is going to be a great example. We've been working on this for a year, and this is going to be very successful. The Howers bought this beautiful property because it's the forest, and they built their home in the woods. And it's in their interest, it's in all of our interests from an ecological perspective. The Nature Conservancy is trying to preserve turkey roosts, which are big ponderosa pines and so on. And one simple little wildfire of 10 acres could take all of that away from here.
Well, it's important with what's going on in the national forest and locally all over with the beetles and the drought and the fire danger. And we just wanted to prevent, any of that from happening as much as we can. And the beetles have not crossed over into this area so much yet, but a little preventative maintenance goes a long way. And we're also concerned because of the dry weather that we've had the last few years that we'll avoid, a bad fire situation. We've been thinking about it for several years, and back in the 70s, my dad cut a lot of the timber on this property, but it's grown up again so thick, and there's a lot of risk there, both from fire and from bugs.
Now, it took you a while to get this project going, from what I understand, because it's expensive. You got to admit that.
Yeah, it's not cheap, but it's worth the expense if you're going to avoid the bug problem and the fire danger. And the risk is lower once we get the little stuff thinned out and get the big trees protected from the bugs and everything, then we'll definitely sleep better at night. The new trees, we'll try and keep them thinned out, but the nutrients from the chipping will definitely be a benefit to the existing trees and help the growth, and so that's a good thing. It's a double benefit.